You thought ATL was just about skating rinks, teenage love, and Southern style? Not even close. Beneath the surface, ATL is a blueprint, a quiet lesson in how to flip your hustle into generational wealth. Rashad Esquire, Ant, and Nunu weren't just characters. They were symbols of struggle, strategy, and the choices that shape our future. In this breakdown, we're unpacking the hidden financial and legacy-building gems most viewers missed. Because ATL wasn't just a movie, it was a message. And if you caught it, it might just change how you see your own grind. Let's start with Rashad, the heart of ATL and the clearest example of what it looks like to lead without asking for the spotlight. Rashad doesn't give long speeches. He's not trying to be the next rapper, dealer, or boss. But from the very first scene, it's clear. He carries the weight, the responsibility of holding the household together, looking after his little brother Ant, and keeping his crew grounded. That's leadership in its rawest form. Rashad works at a car wash and cuts hair in his free time. It's not glamorous, it's not flashy, but it's consistent, it's legal, it's his. While others around him get pulled towards fast money and flex culture, Rashad stays locked into one mission: keep what little they have from falling apart. That might not look like a business plan, but it is. It's strategy in survival mode. His hustle is quiet but layered. He earns with his hands, thinks with his head, and protects with his heart. When Ant starts drifting into the streets, Rashad doesn't panic, he leans in. He talks, warns, and even fights to keep him from going down a path he's already seen play out. That right there is vision. Not just seeing where someone is, but where they could end up if no one intervenes. Rashad doesn't want to be a leader, but life forces it on him. And instead of running from it, he steps up, even when he's tired, even when it's thankless. That's what real leadership looks like in the community. Not a title, not applause, just consistent action in the face of chaos. There's a powerful moment when Rashad chooses to walk away from confrontation, even when his pride is tested. It's small, but it speaks volumes. Because in neighborhoods like theirs, where ego often escalates into violence, restraint is leadership. Choosing not to fight isn't weakness, it's wisdom, it's long-term thinking. Rashad isn't trying to win today. He's trying to survive to see tomorrow. And it's not just about Ant. Rashad is also the anchor for his friends for Esquire, Teddy, and Brooklyn. While each of them is struggling to find their lane, Rashad holds the center. He doesn't judge, he listens, he watches. That emotional intelligence, the ability to feel everything and still move with purpose, is rare. And in Black communities where so many young men are taught to suppress their feelings, Rashad shows that strength isn't hiding your emotions, it's managing them. What ATL does so well is normalize the idea that leadership doesn't always look like a CEO in a suit. Sometimes it's a teenager balancing jobs, watching over his brother, and making small decisions every day that shape his entire future. This is where the wealth mindset begins, not with a bank account, but with self-control, emotional discipline, and purpose. Rashad may not own property yet, but he's already laying the mental foundation for generational wealth. Because before you build anything on paper, you have to build it in your mind. And that sets the tone for the rest of the film, because as we'll see next, Rashad's environment is full of people who represent different paths. Some lead to legacy, some lead to loss, and it's his quiet vision that becomes the compass, not just for himself, but for everyone around him. While Rashad quietly leads with vision from the inside, ATL gives us another important perspective through Esquire, the friend who's already got one foot in another world. Esquire is the guy who dresses a little cleaner, speaks a little whiter, and knows how to code subware at will. He's not just in the neighborhood, he's in private school, interning with a wealthy white businessman, and trying to secure a letter of recommendation to get into a prestigious college. At first glance, Esquire looks like he has it figured out, but look closer and you'll see what he's really navigating: the tension between authenticity and opportunity. Esquire is caught between two identities: who he is at home and who he's expected to be in elite spaces. In the hood, he risks being called fake or bougie. In professional spaces, he risks being tokenized or misunderstood. ATL doesn't exaggerate this. It nails it. This is the reality for so many young Black people who make it out, but never fully feel at home anywhere. You're either too much for the room, but not enough for your roots. There's a scene where Esquire tries to impress the wealthy businessman's family at a formal dinner, pretending to come from a more polished background. When Rashad unexpectedly shows up, the tension is thick. That moment captures the cost of passing. The silent pressure to erase parts of yourself just to get through a door. But here's the thing, wealth isn't just about money, it's about access. And Esquire represents what happens when someone from the block starts unlocking access to rooms that most people are locked out of. The internship, the private school network, the conversations that happen when the cameras are off. ATL reminds us that being in the room is one step, but staying in the room with your identity intact is a whole different challenge. So what does this mean for you? Maybe you're someone who's just starting to move in new spaces, college, corporate, creative industries, where nobody looks like you and you feel the pressure to adapt. ATL, through Esquire, tells you the truth. You can make strategic moves without losing yourself. You don't have to pretend to come from wealth to build it. You don't have to erase your roots to rise. In fact, the most powerful people are the ones who can move through multiple worlds without losing their values. Esquire doesn't always get it right, but his journey is real, and his character teaches a lesson we often miss. Wealth isn't just what's in your pocket, it's who knows your name when you're not in the room and how you carry yourself when they open the door. By the end of the movie, Esquire begins to realize this too. He stops performing and starts showing up as himself. He earns respect not just for being smart, but for being authentic. That lesson is bigger than any scholarship because it's not enough to just enter elite spaces. The real win is bringing your people, your purpose, and your truth with you. And that's what makes Esquire's arc powerful. His story shows us that your hustle might get you in the door, but it's your authenticity and strategy that help you stay and build something lasting. If Rashad represents vision and leadership, and Esquire stands at the crossroads of identity and opportunity, then Ant is the living embodiment of temptation, the fast money, the shortcuts, the illusion of success. Ant's journey in ATL is a sobering one because it mirrors the story of too many young Black boys in underserved communities, trying to get ahead in a system that offers more traps than chances. From the beginning, Ant is full of energy, curiosity, and hunger. He watches the streets closely, drawn to the lifestyle of those who seem to have made it, not just with respect, but with money, with girls, with status. And like so many kids, he doesn't see the risk, he sees the reward. That's where the danger lies. Ant isn't evil. He isn't even reckless by nature. What he is underexposed to alternatives and overexposed to false models of wealth. His entry into the world of drug dealing isn't dramatic. It's quiet, subtle. He gets recruited, coaxed, told he has potential. ATL shows how easy it is for a kid without structure to fall into a lifestyle that seems like progress, but is really a pipeline to prison or the grave. And here's the truth. This is real life for so many in our communities. When a young man feels unseen, unprotected, or unable to provide, he becomes a prime target for the streets to give him an identity. And Ant falls for it, not because he's dumb, but because he's desperate to feel powerful in a world where he's felt powerless. Rashad, who's already juggling jobs and trying to keep things together, sees Ant slipping. He tries to intervene, not with lectures, but with presence. He checks him, he calls him out, even throws hands when necessary. But by the time Rashad realizes how far Ant has gone, the situation has escalated. And that's the heartbreak. You can love someone deeply and still not reach them in time. Ant's story in ATL reflects a generational cycle of hustling without strategy. So many families have watched young men take the fast route because no one ever showed them the long one. They hustle out of necessity, not out of greed. But without structure, guidance, or long-term thinking, that hustle becomes a trap. It gives quick wins and long-term losses. Let's pause here and reflect. How many people do you know, maybe even yourself, who were once like Ant, who took a shortcut because it felt like the only road available? That's why this story matters. ATL doesn't glamorize the drug game. It exposes it. It shows the psychological seduction of quick money, and then it shows the pain that always comes after. One of the most powerful moments is when Ant finally gets caught up. Rashad has to face the fact that even his best effort couldn't fully shield his little brother from the streets. That moment isn't just a personal loss, it's symbolic of the community's loss. Because every Ant represents potential that got redirected, talent that got misused, legacy that got delayed. But here's the lesson. The hustle in itself isn't the enemy. It's the lack of structure, the absence of vision. Hustle without guidance becomes chaos, but hustle with a plan, that's empire. We need to stop telling young people to stop hustling and start teaching them how to redirect that hustle, how to turn it into business, into real estate, into art, into tech, into anything that scales and sustains. Because the energy Ant had, that fire, that drive, if channeled correctly, it could have built a family business, not a rap sheet. And if you're watching this and you've ever felt like Ant, like the world only gives you one option to level up, know this: there are more options, but you have to seek them, build structure around your hustle, find mentors, study the long game. Ant's story is tragic, but it's also a wake-up call, because while Rashad and Esquire show two different paths toward wealth and legacy, Ant shows what happens when no one builds a path at all. So if you're mentoring someone younger than you, or raising kids, or trying to unlearn that fast money mindset yourself, let Ant's story remind you, if we don't give the next generation structure, the streets will give them strategy, and the streets don't play fair. Your hustle isn't the problem, just make sure it's taking you somewhere worth going. After watching Ant fall into the trap of fast money, ATL gives us another kind of lesson, one wrapped in silk, silence, and self-control. Her name? Nu. At first glance, she fits in with the crew. She's got the right clothes, the right energy, the right vibe. But as the story unfolds, you realize something. Nu isn't who she's pretending to be. She's not struggling like Rashad. She's not split between worlds like Esquire. She's not tempted like Ant. Instead, she's quietly living the life that most of the characters, and let's be honest, many of you watching are working so hard to reach. Nu, whose real name is Erin, comes from wealth. Her father is a successful black entrepreneur. She lives in a big, beautiful home. She doesn't want for anything. But here's the twist. She hides it. She dresses down. She blends in. She acts like she's from the same struggle, just to avoid standing out. And let's keep it real. That's a lesson in identity many of you watching can relate to. If you've ever had to shrink yourself to be accepted, if you've ever had to dim your light to avoid judgment, then you understand exactly what Nu's doing. She's not ashamed of her wealth. She's protecting it. She knows that in some environments, success can make you a target, that it can build walls between you and the people you're trying to connect with. So instead of flashing her reality, she folds it up and tucks it away. She chooses community over comfort, at least at first. But here's what makes her important to the story. Nu quietly represents what Black generational wealth can actually look like. Her family isn't flashy. Her dad isn't a rapper or a scammer. He's not in the streets. He's a businessman, clean, intentional, private. And his home is peaceful, structured, safe. A total contrast to what Rashad and Ant are used to. When Rashad discovers who Nu really is, he feels betrayed, not because of what she has, but because she hid it. But step back for a second. How many of you have done the same? Hid your accomplishments, played small in rooms that couldn't handle your growth? Nu's story isn't about deception, it's about survival. The house she comes from, the father who built it, the values she carries, they're subtle, but they speak volumes. And for those of you who grew up never seeing Black families with money, with order, with generational vision, this is what it can look like. Not loud, not viral, not exaggerated, just real. Let's talk about the lesson here. Real wealth doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't need to be flaunted. It doesn't need a caption. Real wealth creates space, creates peace, creates opportunity, and protects itself from the spotlight when necessary. Nu teaches this without saying a word. Many of you watching are chasing success right now. You want to build. You want to create freedom for your kids. But remember, when you get there, you don't owe the world an explanation. You don't need to apologize for making it out or for doing it differently. You need to protect your peace and walk in your truth. Nu is a reminder that success doesn't have to disconnect you from your people, but you can't pretend forever. Eventually, your truth has to come out, and when it does, the right people won't judge you for it. They'll be inspired by it. Nu's father is proof that Black wealth doesn't have to come from entertainment or sports. It can come from discipline, from business, from structure. And that's the message so many of you never saw growing up but need to see now, because that's what we're building toward. Her story shows that there's power in not needing validation, that the goal isn't to flex, it's to be free. Her silence is strength, her privacy is protection, and her presence is the blueprint. So the next time you think about wealth, don't just think about cars and chains. Think about a house full of peace. A father who provides without performing. A daughter who walks through life knowing she's already enough. That's the real win. That's what we're building. And as we head into the next section, ask yourself this: do you want to look rich or live free? Because news shouldn't have to prove anything. And that's what made her powerful. Let's stay right where we left off at New News House, but this time shift your focus from her to her father. Montel, played with subtle strength, is the kind of character who barely says much, but everything about him speaks. His demeanor, his home, his relationship with his daughter, it's all intentional. He's not loud. He doesn't show off, but he is in control. And in the world of ATL, that kind of quiet, structured black man is rare on screen and powerful by design. Montel is a real estate owner. That alone places him in a different tax bracket, not just financially, but mentally. He represents a level of generational vision that most of the young characters in the film have never seen up close. He's not hustling for the moment. He's building for decades. And not just for himself, for his daughter and her kids after that. Now, if you're watching this and you've ever dreamed of breaking cycles, of being the first to build something your family can stand on, pay attention. Montel is your future self if you play the long game right. When Rashad steps into their home for the first time, you can see the contrast all over his face. Everything is clean, spacious, peaceful. There's no chaos, no noise, no tension, just stability. And it's a culture shock, because Rashad has been surviving, not living, but Montel, he's thriving in silence. That's where the real message hits. Wealth doesn't yell, it whispers. It moves through deeds, not declarations, through equity, not Instagram. And Montel embodies that perfectly. There's a moment when he tells Rashad something simple but powerful, a line that cuts through the scene: "Don't waste my daughter's time." On the surface, it sounds like a protective dad flexing, but if you really listen, it's deeper than that. What he's saying is, I've built too much, protected too much, and sacrificed too much. For her to gamble it on someone without a plan, he's not just checking Rashad's respect, he's checking his vision. And that's a challenge for many of you watching. If you want to be taken seriously by a partner, by a future mentor, by your own children, you have to move like someone who's building something real. That means ownership. That means discipline. That means not falling for every flashy opportunity, but focusing on what lasts. Montel doesn't flex because he doesn't need to. He's got land, he's got options, he's got legacy. And that's something every one of us should be aiming for. Not just wealth in the moment, but wealth that can't be erased by a layoff, a trend, or a bad month. You want real power? Own something. Build equity. Stop renting your future. Montel is the result of a mindset that says, I'd rather own quietly than flex loudly. Too many of us were raised to chase income, not ownership, to get the job, not the deed. But ATL, in its quietest scenes, flips that narrative. It tells you ownership is the new flex. Whether it's real estate, intellectual property, or even your own time, ownership is what separates people who have control from people who are constantly at the mercy of someone else's decisions. Montel didn't just hand his daughter a life of luxury, he handed her standards. And that's the real gem, because when you build something solid, you teach the next generation what's normal and what they should never settle for. So many of you watching right now are first-generation builders. You're starting from scratch. That's not a disadvantage. That's power, because you get to decide what your last name stands for. You get to plant seeds now that your kids won't have to suffer for later. Montel is the model. He shows what happens when you build with intention, when you care more about ownership than attention, when you live under your means so your kids can live beyond them. That's not just success, that's legacy. So here's the question: are you hustling for the weekend or building for the next 30 years? Because the real lesson in this part of ATL isn't in the skating rink or the neighborhood drama. It's in that house, in that man, in that mindset. Montel didn't make noise, he made moves. And if you're serious about changing your story, that's the model you follow. Build quiet, own loud, and never apologize for playing the long game. As ATL reaches its final act, we see something rare in movies like this. Not just resolution, but transformation. Everyone doesn't walk away rich. There are no dramatic last-minute fortunes. But what we do get are choices. And that's more valuable than money. Because choices are where legacy begins. Let's start with Rashad. After carrying the weight of his home, protecting Ann, and juggling the pressure of just surviving, Rashad finally makes a decision to stop drifting. He accepts responsibility for more than just his brother. He accepts responsibility for his own future. He doesn't run toward the fast life or retreat into anger. Instead, he leans into purpose. Whether it's through his art, his relationships, or simply being more intentional, Rashad chooses growth. And for many of you watching, that's the first step. Not waiting for life to get easier, but deciding to move smarter. Esquire, on the other hand, steps fully into his duality. He realizes he doesn't have to perform to belong. He can walk into rooms built for elite white America and still bring his full self. That moment when he stops pretending and embraces his identity, that's what freedom looks like. Because true wealth isn't just access, it's authenticity in spaces where you're not expected to have it. Esquire shows us that we don't just need a seat at the table, we need to build tables of our own. Then there's Ant. His arc is the most painful and the most honest. He chased the fast hustle and it cost him. But even in his fall, there's a lesson. It's never too early to turn around, but sometimes it's too late to avoid the fall. Ant reminds all of us that the streets will offer you shortcuts with heavy tolls. The hope is that his pain becomes a warning, not a blueprint. And behind them all is Montel, Minu's father, showing what it looks like when someone has already walked the road and planted trees for others to sit under. His presence quietly anchors the film, reminding us that wealth isn't just earned, it's passed down. Now, step back for a second. This isn't just a movie, it's a microcosm of what many of you are living right now, trying to make decisions that won't just affect your next paycheck, but your last name. So let's bring it into the real world. Tyler Perry, who built a 330-acre studio in ATL, that's Rashad, with a vision that's scaled. He didn't wait for approval. He created his own lane. Killer Mike, with Greenwood Bank, that's Esquire turned activist. He's not just getting into the system, he's changing it from within, on his terms. Even Nunu's character mirrors the next generation of young black wealth. Quietly powerful, often misunderstood, but grounded in legacy, not flash. This is what ATL gives us in its final minutes. A blueprint, not a perfect one, but a real one. Rashad teaches you to protect your circle while building your future. Esquire teaches you to own your identity while navigating power. Ant teaches you that structure beats speed, every time. Montel teaches you to play the long game and protect what matters. So the question isn't whether you saw the movie, it's whether you caught the message. Because ATL wasn't just entertainment, it was a case study. Many of you watching are standing at your own crossroads right now, and the decision isn't hustle or not, it's whether your hustle leads to survival or to legacy. Choose wisely and build something that lives longer than you. Let's bring it all home. By the time ATL fades to black, the message is loud and clear. This wasn't about skating, summer love, or teenage drama. This was about choices, about survival, about transformation, and most importantly, about how to flip your environment into an empire. Let's recap the blueprint. Rashad was the anchor, a quiet leader holding his world together through discipline and protection. He showed that legacy starts with taking responsibility, not just for others, but for yourself. Esquire showed us the power of access, but reminded us that it means nothing without authenticity. He proved that you can walk through elite spaces without erasing where you come from. Access means more when you bring your identity with you. Ant gave us the hardest lesson, the cost of chasing fast money without structure. His fall is a warning many of you have seen play out in real life. The hustle without vision becomes a trap. And Nunu's family showed us what quiet generational wealth looks like. No flexing, no drama, just structure, discipline, and legacy passed down. The kind of wealth that doesn't scream, but lasts. ATL wasn't just a coming-of-age film, it was a coded message for anyone trying to break cycles. It's about learning to move with intention, to value what really matters, and to recognize that the real game isn't fast cash, it's freedom. So now it's your turn. Drop a comment, tell me what lesson hit you the hardest. Was it Rashad's quiet leadership, Esquire's internal battle, Ant's tragic path, or the wealth Nunu's father built without ever raising his voice? And if you're serious about building, learning, and growing from the culture we grew up on, hit that subscribe button. This is Black Wealth Uncut, where we break down the stories they never taught us in school, but buried in your favorite shows and films. No fluff, just game, keep building, keep learning, your legacy is already in motion.